Modern! I absolutely love Modern. I go to a bunch of tournaments and my deck is Indomitable Creativity. So I wanted to make a video on all the new cards that could see play in Modern. So the first card I want to talk about is Haywire Might. Haywire Might is 1 of any color for a 1/1 artifact creature insect. He has, when Haywire Might dies, you gain 2 life. And then you can pay 1 green, sacrifice Haywire Might, exile target non-creature artifact or non-creature enchantment. So the reason this card is good in Modern is the third ability in Erzas Saga. Erzas Saga is a card that sees a ton of play. And it's really good at cheating out 1-drops. So Haywire Might make a really good sideboard option. It could even be mainboard as a 1-of just to make sure you get it, because it hits most decks. Let's look at Hammer Time. It annihilates Hammer Time. Not only is it a blocker, but it takes out most of its engine. It takes out Colossal Hammer, it takes out Sigarda's Aid, it takes out Cauldron Complete. This is indestructible, but Haywire Might exiles. So it's one of the best answers to this card, because this card is so difficult to deal with, being indestructible and giving the creature indestructible. So that's really good. But a lot of decks just run random enchantments and artifacts. Let's look at Indomitable Creativity. They run Leyline Binding, which is really good at taking out. They run Fable, which is really important for their matchup. It takes out Amulet of Vigor, which is really important for Amulet Time. And also in decks that it doesn't take out cards, like Burn, it doesn't hit anything on Burn, it gains you the 2 life, so you're kind of okay playing it anyways. Also, another really cool thing that it hits is that it can hit their Erzas Saga. Erzas Saga is a enchantment, so you can shoot this down with Haywire Might. So I think this card will see a lot of play in the green Erzas Saga decks. But is there that many green Erzas Saga decks? Not really. I can't really find too many of them. Maybe Amulet Time maybe wants this in the sideboard because they do run the Saga. So yeah, cool card. Erzas Workshop is a land Urza. It has tap 1 colorless mana. Metalcraft. Tap. Add 1 colorless mana for each Urza land you control. Activate only if you control 3 or more artifacts. So obviously this card goes into the mono green Tron. The problem is that all the artifacts that mono green Tron run, they're made to sacrifice. They're not made to stay on the board. So getting 3 of them is sort of difficult. I think the deck would have to change to accommodate for Erzas Workshop. What I like about it is that it doesn't care what type of Urza land you have. You can have 3 Erzas Towers, and this makes 4 mana. And when it taps its last ability, it counts itself as an Urza land, which is pretty nice. And another good thing about this is that Tron, they run a bunch of land tutors. They run Sylvan Scrying, and then they run Expedition Map. So you could maybe run this as like a 1-up, and when you have the artifacts necessary to tap its Metalcraft ability, you get it, and you put it into play, and then it makes a ton of mana. And the ton of mana is really good in Tron. Obviously Tron loves mana, but Walking Ballista could get really big, because this land could make you 5 to 6 mana if you're late in the game and you got a bunch of Urza lands. You could also play Emrakul way easier. So yeah, I think the deck needs to be changed a bit to accommodate for this card, but if it can, I think it'll be a very strong inclusion into the Tron archetype. Brotherhood's End is 1 of any color and 2 red for a sorcerer. You choose 1. Brotherhood End deals 3 damage to each creature and each planeswalker, or destroy all artifacts with mana value 3 or less. So Brotherhood's End is basically a better Anger of the Gods. Anger of the Gods isn't really strong in Modern. I've been playing it as a sideboard piece, and it's been really good because there's a lot of merfolk in my community, but Brotherhood's End has the ability of also destroying artifacts, which makes it significantly better. It hoses a lot of decks, like Hammer Time, as I said. They both run a lot of creatures, and also a lot of artifacts that are 3 or less, so that can be really good. It hoses Burn, because they run a bunch of creatures. It hoses Rakdos Midrange. Grinding Station, they run a bunch of artifacts. Affinity, Hardened Scales. It wins a lot of matchups. So if you're playing a deck that runs red, and you're not running a lot of creatures and artifacts, so that this doesn't actually hurt you, this is a great sideboard base. Calamities Wake is 1 of any color and 1 white for an instant. It has exile all graveyards, and players can't cast non-creature spells this turn. Exile Calamity Wake. What a flexible and neat sideboard card. It does 2 semi-powerful things that are very different. Exiling your opponent's graveyard at instant speed can be pretty powerful. Let's say you're playing Living End, and then they cast a Cascade creature, and then they go into the Living End. In response, you play this. You exile all of their graveyard. Now their Living End does nothing, and probably lose the game at that point. And it's almost almost better than Rest in Peace, which is a card that sees a lot of play, because with Rest in Peace, Living End has their sideboard to remove it. They have Foundation Breaker, which destroys target artifact or enchantment. They have Force of Vigor, which destroys target artifact or enchantment. But Calamities Wake is none of those, so they can't really deal with it. And then the second ability, where they can't cast non-creature spells, that has a lot of value. You can always play on their untap step. You play it, they can't cast anything else. If they're running sorceries, if they cast instants, they can cast instants in response. But you could like stop a board wipe and protect your creatures. Or you could play it on your turn and take out a counterspell from their deck. Make sure that they can't play other things during your turn. So if you're ever playing a deck that doesn't care about graveyards and doesn't care about casting non-creature spells, this card is pretty decent as a sideboard piece. Lay Down Arms is 1 white mana for sorcery. It has exile target creature with mana value less than or equal to the number of planes you control. Its controller gains 3 life. For 1 mana, this card is incredibly efficient. The problem with it is that there really aren't that many mono white decks, and if they are mono white, they don't just run basics like Hammer Time, they run a bunch of different lands. So I don't really think it's good in mono white, but we do live in a world with fetches, triomes, and shocklands, so getting a lot of planes isn't as hard as it used to be. So this card could actually get pretty crazy the longer the game goes on, because the bigger a card you can kill. The problem is that a lot of decks, they cheat out big creatures. Let's say Indomitable Creativity. Really the only target you can hit with this is Archon of Cruelty, and that's 8 mana, and you're not going to get to 8. Or Amulet Titan. They ramp out really fast into prime time and Cultivated Colossus, which is going to take a really long time for you to get there. So it's kind of offset by how you can cheat creatures, but if you're killing like a 4-drop for 1 mana and your opponent gains 3 life, that is crazy tempo. The Stone Brain is 2 of any color for a legendary artifact that has pay 2 and tap. Exile the Stone Brain, choose a card name, search target opponent's graveyard, hand, and library for up to 4 cards with that name, and exile them. That player shuffles, then draw a card for each card exiled from their hand this way. Activate only as a sorcery. So Stone Brain is basically a bad Unborn Ego. Instead of paying 3 mana, you're paying 4. But it does not have colors, so it can be played in every deck, and it can do some pretty crazy stuff. So one of the best decks in the format is Indomitable Creativity. If you take out all the Archons in Indomitable Creativity, they don't have any win con. Of course, they can sideboard in Amrakul, but it also hoses Amulet Titan, Living End, and Crashing Footfalls by taking away their only win con. Without a win con, the game's over. But what makes Stone Brain actually crazy is Karn the Great Creator. His -2, where you choose an artifact from outside the game, is really powerful because you can put this as a 1-of in your sideboard, and whenever you need it to win the game, you can get it and use it. That's really powerful, and it's going to have an impact on the meta, especially for Tron, because Tron loves Karn the Great Creator. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love talking about Modern. Is there any cards that I missed? Because I know I didn't really look at the Commander cards, so put those in the comment. Please like and subscribe, and see ya.